Hello everybody. So today we're going to look into a legacy deck, and this is one that I've been working on quite a while, and I call this one Naya Green Stompy. So essentially it's a mono green Stompy deck, but there are some red and white spells in it. One red spell main board and some white spells sideboard, and you'll see what they are. It's pretty much still mono green. So let's start off with our tutors. So we have one natural order, 4 mana, sack a creature, that's green, and search for a green creature, put it on the battlefield. This can lead to some pretty good turn twos, but we don't want this every game. Our number one tutor is Green Sun Zenith. X and a green, search for a green creature, mana cost X less, put it onto the battlefield. Shuffle this into your deck. So, this leads to the ideal turn one play is with Green Sun Zenith, and that would be searching for Dryad Arbor. So it's a dude on turn one, and it's ramp. And we'll go ahead and pull out all 4 of these, because this is the engine that makes the deck work. We have 4 Burning Tree Emissaries. 2 mana for a 2/2. When it enters, it gets you 2 mana back. 4 Hidden Herbalists, which is 2 mana for a 2/2. If you have Revolt, it gives you 2 mana back. And the engine just keeps going. It's a lengthy engine. 4 Metamorphose, 2 mana. Add 2 mana of any color combination to your mana pool. Draw a card. 4 Wild Canters. 1 mana, 1/1. You can sack it, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. 4 Elvish Spirit Guides. Exile it from your hand, get a green mana. And 3 Crop Rotates. It's an instant. 1 mana, sack a land, search for a land, put it on the battlefield. Alright, so this leads to a lot of mana. What do we want to do with all this mana? So, one thing you'll notice by looking at them is you've got to sack the Wild Canter to get mana. Takes 2 mana, it only gives you 2 mana back. All of these guys are 2 mana that only give you 2 mana back. So what we want to do is there's 12 cards here that all are 2 that give us 2 mana back. We want to chain as many of these together as possible and get as much power on the battlefield as possible. So on turn 2, if we can have our Dryad Arbor and chain a bunch of these things together, and well, this is for later, we can do a few things. One, if we don't hit the cards that we want to hit, we have Horn Kavu. 2 mana, 3/4, that'll let us pick one of them up and do it again. And we have 3 Elvish Visionary, 2 mana, 1/1. When it enters, you draw a card. So if we fizzle and we finish off with the Elvish Visionary, we can play our Elvish Visionary so that it's not as painful, because we're still getting a 1/1 body on the battlefield and we're drawing a card. So it's not as painful to finish with the Elvish Visionary. It still sucks, but it's a body and you get our card to replace it. And our Horn Kavu can pick up a Visionary to draw us another card from that later on. So what we want to be doing with these guys to finish off with our 2 mana is, 1, we have 3 Mere Superions, 2 mana, 5/6, spend mana produced by creatures, spend only mana produced by creatures, cast Mere Superion. So all of these creatures produce 2 mana. So we want to finish off by casting a 5/6. So if we can chain 2, 3, or 4 of those guys together, then we're going to have anywhere from 6 to 10 power on board just off those guys, and then Mere Superion is going to be a big nasty body along with it. And which, also, finishing off that, if our opponent doesn't have a sweeper, what it does is it forces them to take the damage from our 2/2 guys and kill the Mere Superion, and if they don't have an answer to the immediate threat, then they're roughly taking anywhere from 11 to 15 damage. And that's always a plus. And another thing we can do is, if we can be chaining all these guys together and we can get a Spirit Guide in our hand, we can also play all them and turn 2 Steel Leaf Champion. 3 green for a 5/4 that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And there's always the turn 1. Like if you're lucky enough to get a forest and 2 spirit guides in your opening hand, then you could have a 5/4 on turn 1. So if your opponent doesn't have 1 mana removal, you're going to be smacking them for 5 until they can deal with it. So the big baddie, and this is only a 2 of, because I've tried. So originally, when I first built this deck, I tried running Gigantosaurus. I tried running 4 copies of Galta here. I tried running Colony Hydras, and it was just too much big stuff, and I ended up having clunky hands where I would have too many fatties and not enough of anything else. And the deck, it just didn't work because that specific strategy just, it wasn't good. So eventually I narrowed it down to 2 Galtas, 12 mana, cost X less to cast for X is total power of creatures you control, and he's a 12/12 with trample. So the end game here is to cast Galta, if possible, if you draw into him. If you can turn 2 Natural Order, in which that's extremely possible to turn 2 Natural Order, because if you turn 1 Green Sun for a Dryad Arbor, then all you need is an Elvish Spirit Guide. On your next turn, you play your land for turn, you've got 4 mana with a Spirit Guide, you can Natural Order for Galta. Natural Order, sacking the Dryad Arbor, get Galta. Good game. But with all the things, if we can be chaining all these guys together on turn 1 or turn 2, then the following turn, we can drop Galta. So if we can Elvish Spirit Guide and land and chain a bunch of these guys together, then on turn 2, we should be able to Galta. And the same goes turn 2, if we chain a bunch of them together. Turn 3, we can drop Galta. So that is everything but mana base. So let's take a look at our mana base. So I got a buddy that loves Surgical Extraction. And just in general conversation with him for Legacy, his favorite thing to talk about is your opponent turn 1 fetches. And as soon as that fetch hits the graveyard, he will automatically assume that you have 4 of that specific fetch in your deck, and he'll Surgical it just to try to decrease your odds of drawing lands throughout the game. And if you're playing more than 2 colors and he Surgicals a fetch, then by reducing the odds of you drawing lands and taking away all of that specific fetch, it's reducing your odds of fixing your mana base. So he will Surgical your fetch on turn 1, which is a horrible thing to do. But to prepare for people with that mindset, I have 1 Windswept Heath, 1 Wooded Foothills, a single Verdant Catacombs, and a lonely Misty Rainforest, because they all fetch forest and they're all different. So if I am Surgical on a fetch on turn 1, it's going to be a 1 of, and they'll have wasted a Surgical. I'm happy with that. Alright, so we have crop rotation in the deck, and what are we crop rotating for? So 1, crop rotation is a defense against Wasteland, because Wasteland is an extremely popular land in Legacy, and it is horrible when someone Wastelands your turn 1 land. And if they're Wastelanding on turn 1, then they've got a deck that's built around that specific thing where they want to Wasteland you on turn 1. So when they go to Wasteland, we can crop rotate and we can get Nykthos. And Nykthos can also lead to turn 2 Galta. Because if you can go off with chaining a bunch of guys together, but you can't quite finish it off because you don't have the mana to cast Galta, well, on your next turn, you can potentially crop rotate for Nykthos, activate it, have mana along with those guys, and then cast Galta. So that's a thing. 1 Firelit Thicket that we can crop rotate for, because sometimes just the way the game works, let's say all we can chain is Burning Tree Emissaries, but our top end is going to be a Steel Leaf Champion, so we need 3 green mana. The Burning Tree produces a red and a green. This is here to filter that mana so that we can have double green. And the same, like if we've got a Horn Kavu, but all we've got is Hidden Herbalist to chain together. We can use this to filter it into red-green so that we can cast our Horn Kavu. So it is here just to filter the mana from those guys. So main deck has no white, but we are running 2 Horizon Canopies, so it is green mana when we need it. But in this deck, before sideboard, it's really here just to sack and draw a card. So card draw without having to use a spell on it. Running 1 Savannah, 1 Taiga, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 basic forest. Take a look at the sideboard and wrap this bad boy up. So we have 1 Abrade, 3 damage to a creature, or destroy an artifact. So any type of artifact deck, this is obviously going to come in because it lets you destroy an artifact. And it's also removal, so decks like Lurin, you can bring it in, destroy combo pieces as they play them, along with 2 copies of Lightning Bolt. This is probably never going to go to face when we bring it in. It's most of the time just going to be 1 mana kill a creature. For control, we actually have a lot for control because control is always a difficult matchup, no matter what format you're playing in. So we have 1 Sylvan Library, so when our opponents want to try to make it be a long, grindy game, we can bring this in, and if we play and it doesn't get countered, this is a lot of card advantage. There's a lot of cards you're going to see, and it's going to open up a lot of options and help you make better plays to try to make that long game they're planning for a lot shorter than they want it to be. 1 Gaddock Tea, because it shuts off a lot of cards. Against stacks, it shuts off smokestacks. They can't cast their smokestacks. Any control deck, they can't cast Force of Will. And it's important to note that we can Green Sun for this, potentially on turn 1. It's a lot of potentials. Normally we can Green Sun for this on turn 2, but there's always a potential that most of our sideboard creatures we can Green Sun for on turn 1. Some we can't 100%, but others there's a potential for it. Again, for anything stacks E related to Druid Preserver, making it where our opponent can't make us sacrifice permanents. Anyone that wants to play Edict effects, this is going to come in against, but it's mainly here for stacks. 2 Voice of Resurgence for anyone that wants to play Magic during our turn. And of course, if they have spot removal, that's non-exiling effects. This is going to give us a dude, so if they cast things on our turn, they give us a dude. If they want to kill this, they give us a dude. So just really great defense against those types of decks. We have 2 Carnage Tyrants. 6 mana, 7/6, can't be countered, trample, hexproof. So, well, we can stick this. So if we're playing also against a deck that wants to make it go long game, this most of the time will come in alongside the Sylvan Library. So yeah, that's Carnage Tyrant. Pretty much the only thing that'll get rid of it that I've played against is Miracles, because hexproof doesn't get around Terminus. And 3 Summoning Traps. So this is rarely going to be cast for 6 mana. You're most of the time going to cast it for 0 because they're going to counter a creature, because this deck is mostly creatures. And when they do, you look at the top 7, you can put a creature from them onto the battlefield, the rest of them on the bottom of your deck in any order. 1 Reclamation Sage, just because the Abrade is a good card, but if we also need a tutorable target for artifact decks, so Rec Sage we can tutor for with Green Sun. And the last card is Dryad Militant. Mainly here for any deck that wants to run Snapcaster and Ant, Ad Nauseam Tendrils, because if we're exiling instants and sorceries from the graveyards, it's kind of hard for them to go off. I mean, they still can, but this will kind of reduce their chances if they want to be flashing things back from the graveyard. So that is Naya Green Stompy. Hope you liked it, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.